So, what's really funny is like when I share things and I'm putting words together to describe some phenomenon or talking about the mind, people actually might think that's my personality, and it's really not. You see, the thing with transformation and enlightenment is it unlocks new dimensions of cognitive abilities. And, my personality has nothing to do with that. I've made the context and focus simply on stuff that I think makes a difference for people. So, but on a personal level, it's not how I function on a day-to-day basis. It's like having the ability to do that, but not the necessity. And so there's even times where I thought, you know what? I don't need to do this. I'm just going to disappear. I like what I like. I like cars. I like pizza. I like watching basketball. And I have the ability to just go out and socialize and turn that off. See, when you have a consciousness awakening, you get control over your being. And it's as if every previous version of myself, from the guy that would dress in Hooters outfits and party in Vegas to the football player that only dreamt of the NFL and, couldn't sit in front of a guidance counselor. I mean, I've had so many different experiences that people would make the mistake of listening to me and just thinking this is like the way I was. It's not. You see, the problem is that when people look at me and start thinking I'm smart, well, it's clear, but the point of it is that what I'm trying to tell people is that all human beings have the potential for genius and unlimited creative capacities, that psychology is absolutely wrong about the human mind. Psychology really is such a limited field of study that's relegated to dogmatic philosophy for most people. Most people that study psychology have absolutely no self-awareness, because the problem with words is that words are mistaken for things themselves. Words are merely symbolic. They're merely sounds associated with different phenomenon. And if you just study words and you memorize them to recall them, they never actually have any experiential value. And so that you forget the information. See, information is useless if it has no experiential connection. And the problem with an education system that has become a funnel for people's economic future is that people associate their grades and performance as the value, not the knowledge. And so cramming information fueled by coffee, competing for grades, has completely eliminated the Socratic nature of the development of intellectual abilities. And so losing the experiential component of knowledge has made psychology the most ineffective and foolish field of study, because it has no power to transform people. That my coaching has literally ended mental illness for many people. And I'm talking about people that had every kind of trauma you could experience, including myself, where diagnosed with bipolar disorder, anxiety disorder, borderline personality disorder, diagnosed and with anxiety disorder and treated medically. We're talking about people that have been on drugs and in therapy twice a week since the age of 12, talking to me at the age in their 50s. In one conversation, 6 months later, there's no need for medication or therapy, and they're living in a present moment experience, so their emotions are normalized. You see, this doesn't mean you don't have emotion. It just means that your emotions now restore to where they're informative about what's actually happening. You see, if somebody with borderline does my coaching, and it could take 20 minutes, they will go back in their life, and I don't tell them anything. I don't need to give them any advice, because they'll see the same things I do. When you're normalized, you're normalized. And so the very first time a narcissist devalues them, they have an epiphany, because they've unlocked their subconscious. Their memories expand. Their memory, see, subconscious is just the total sum of awareness outside the boundaries of the tunnel vision fixation on your own problems. You're talking about, say, feeling not good enough. Well, when you have somebody treating you a certain way and it triggers not good enough, it recalls an emotional paradigm from a different period of time, and it overrides the emotion that would be associated with somebody treating you poorly. And so when she goes back, the not good enough is gone, and when this person treats her poorly, she feels it. Rather than being agreeable, yeah, you're right, I should fix this, she used to think of this person as a really good friend that always had her back, because her own sense of not good enough was consistent with his devaluation of her. And he always seemed to have all the answers, but he kept her small. And so he could control and manipulate her based on this dynamic. And so it seemed to work. But the very first time, what happens is the emotional feeling was present in all of her memories, except when she accesses memories, she's looking through the lens of not good enough. You're obscuring the total sum of her awareness in every moment of her life. And so the human consciousness gets divided into two spaces: subconscious, which is an objective consciousness, and it is literally just the process of the brain and interpreting everything outside of yourself, and it grows with you over time. It's aware of all your mistakes, it's aware of everything, but it doesn't have judgment. It just forms reality. And so we exist as the momentary experience. And the momentary experience can envelop the total sum of one's consciousness, or it can fixate and read something and block things out on its own. And so the flexibility of consciousness is under our conscious control in normal circumstances, but those are adulterated by fear. So the fight or flight mechanism involuntarily collapses consciousness, and people live out the majority of their life within the subjective space of an adulterated tunnel vision, enveloping all these triggers that they try to continually survive and overcome. And it's inescapable, and you can't. It's like a Chinese finger trap of the mind, because the experience of not good enough is triggered, and then it fuels itself with ongoing stimulation because it confirms its own existence. Meaning, you feel not good enough, the feeling continues to stimulate the feeling, because it's a rhetorical repetitive pattern where the fight or flight mechanism was activated, and then the missing emotions that it caused were also the cause, is the interpretation. And so the pattern of not good enough is the result of the fight or flight being initiated, but then the pattern of not good enough is also saved as a stimulant for the own pattern, meaning that because these patterns were created by fight or flight and then interpreted as the cause of fight or flight, the experiential trigger of not good enough triggers the same paradoxical, repetitive, pattern of neurological activity and emotional recall. And so people get stuck ruminating simply because the neurological pattern that is caused by fight or flight, the obliteration of emotions, is then observed as the missing emotions. And so when a child gets triggered into fight or flight, it creates a pseudo-abandonment. And then that abandonment becomes saved as the cause of this something's wrong. And so something's wrong causes the abandonment, and abandonment is the cause of something's wrong. Something's wrong causes the sadness, and sadness causes the something's wrong. Something's wrong causes not good enough, and not good enough causes not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. Stuck causes more stuck, stuck, stuck. And so these things stimulate more sympathetic activity, blocking the cognitions associated with normal consciousness. And so this forces people to analyze their whole life. The analyzing is a secondary cognitive function, but the problem is it's adulterated by your fear. And so it stimulates you to try to idealize your way out of this situation. And so people need hope. People need a fantasy future that becomes one large overarching fight or flight reaction, where you imagine a hopeful fantasy perfect future, because perfect is the only thing you can imagine to avoid being triggered and devalued, because you become hypersensitive to merely the thoughts of other people or their facial expressions. And it could trigger not belonging, where you automatically react to the maladaptive behaviors of others by internally inducing your own reaction to yourself. And these reactionary dynamics can be seen in all abuse cycles. All narcissists who date people pleasers, you'll just see the same behavioral outcomes, because when you have an outwardly facing narc injury that triggers an inwardly facing I'm not good enough or abandonment, then this person then attaches to them to try to fix the narcissist in order to overcome this abandonment anxiety. And because these emotions block the formation, or at least the experience and expression of normal emotions, the person will be oblivious. They'll be feeling like they're not good enough when unable to really observe that this behavior from this person should be making them feel mortified, horrified, or disgusted. And so then they'll become a victim later. And that's why you see these inescapable patterns and guilt trips and Darvo It's all taking advantage of this system that is haywire. And I don't know what that has to do with me, but hey.